Queen Lyra stood on the observation deck of the massive space station, looking out at the gathering of ships from 100 different worlds. The Peace Summit on Kepler 9 had brought together representatives from every major power in the galaxy. As ruler of the Valorian Empire, she commanded respect wherever she went. Her people were warriors, bred for battle across 12 star systems. She had won more fights than she could count, and her tactical mind was known throughout space. But today was not about war. Today was about preventing one. She watched as a small shuttle approached the station. The markings on its side identified it as coming from Earth, a planet she knew little about. The humans were new to space travel, barely 200 years since their first ships had left their home world. The reports she had read described them as peaceful, more interested in art and science than conquest. Their military was small, their technology unremarkable. They posed no threat to anyone. When the human delegation entered the conference hall, Lyra paid little attention at first. There were dozens of species present, each with their own customs and appearances. But then she noticed one human standing apart from the others. He was tall but not imposing, with dark hair touched by gray at the temples. He wore simple clothes, nothing like the ceremonial armor or elaborate robes favored by other diplomats. He carried no weapons, not even a ceremonial blade. His name was Daniel Wright, and he served as Earth's cultural ambassador. While other delegates argued about trade routes and military alliances, Daniel spent his time in the art galleries and music halls that lined the station's residential sections. Lyra encountered him there one evening, standing before a holographic display of ancient Valorian battle murals. "They're beautiful," he said, noticing her approach. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "The way your artists captured motion and emotion in the same image. It must take years of training." Lyra found herself surprised. Most foreigners looked at Valorian art and saw only violence. "You understand what you're looking at." "I try to understand every culture I encounter. That's my job, after all." He smiled, and there was nothing calculated about it. "Your people value honor and courage above all else. These murals show warriors fighting not for conquest, but to protect their families. There's a difference." They talked for hours that night. Daniel showed her images of Earth's art, played recordings of something called jazz music, and spoke about human philosophy with the passion of someone who truly cared about such things. He asked about Valorian customs, listened carefully to her answers, and never once tried to impress her with false knowledge. Over the following weeks, as the summit continued, Lyra found herself seeking out Daniel's company. Her generals and advisors noticed, of course. They made jokes about the soft human in private, questioning why their queen wasted time with someone so clearly unsuited for battle. But Lyra ignored them. There was something refreshing about Daniel's presence. He didn't compete with her, didn't try to prove his strength or intelligence. He simply existed beside her, content to share ideas and listen. One evening, they walked together through the station's gardens, artificial environments that simulated dozens of different worlds. Daniel pointed out earth plants among the collection, explaining their names and characteristics with obvious affection. "You really love these things," Lyra observed. "I do. There's something peaceful about growing things, watching them develop from seeds into living beauty. It requires patience and care, but the results are worth it." He plucked a small flower and offered it to her. "On Earth, we give flowers to people we care about. It's a simple gesture, but it means something." Lyra took the flower, studying its delicate petals. On her world, warriors gave weapons as tokens of affection. The idea of offering something so fragile seemed strange, yet somehow more meaningful. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Daniel looked up at the artificial sky above them. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you ever get tired? Of being the warrior queen, the tactical genius, the one everyone looks to for strength? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before. Sometimes, she admitted. But it's my duty. My people need me to be strong. Being strong doesn't mean you can't also be other things. Human history is full of warriors who wrote poetry, generals who painted landscapes, soldiers who came home and grew gardens. He met her eyes. Strength and gentleness aren't opposites. They're complements. Something in his words struck deep. Lyra had spent her entire life proving her strength, never allowing herself to show softness or vulnerability. But here was this human, this supposedly weak creature from a minor world, suggesting that maybe she didn't have to choose. The summit lasted 3 months. By the end, trade agreements had been signed, borders had been established, and the threat of war had been pushed back. But for Lyra, the most important development had nothing to do with politics. On the final night, Daniel found her alone on the observation deck. "I have to return to Earth tomorrow," he said. "But I don't want this to end." "Neither do I," Lyra replied. "Then let me make a proposal. Not just as an ambassador, but as a man who has found someone extraordinary." He took her hand. "Marry me. Let our union be a bridge between our worlds. Let me stand beside you, not as a warrior or a politician, but as a partner." Lyra's heart raced. Marriage between species was rare, but not unheard of. Yet she had never considered it for herself. She was a queen, a warrior, someone who had always put duty before personal desire. But looking at Daniel, she realized that maybe this was both. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." The wedding took place 2 months later on the Valorian homeworld. It was a grand ceremony, attended by representatives from 40 different species. Daniel stood beside Lyra in a simple dark suit while she wore her full battle armor, as tradition demanded. Her people watched with mixed emotions. Some saw it as a smart political move, binding Earth to their empire. Others whispered doubts about their queen choosing such an unremarkable mate. A few of her generals barely hid their disappointment that she hadn't chosen a warrior. But Daniel seemed unbothered by any of it. He spoke his vows clearly and honestly, promising to stand beside her in all things. He learned the Valorian marriage customs and performed them with respect and care. When the ceremony ended and they were officially bound, he smiled at her with the same gentle warmth he'd shown that first night in the art gallery. The celebration lasted 3 days. Daniel moved through the crowds with easy grace, speaking with nobles and common soldiers alike. He asked questions about Valorian history, admired their weapons and armor, and showed genuine interest in their stories. By the end, even some of her skeptical generals had warmed to him, if only because he clearly made their queen happy. In the weeks that followed, Daniel settled into life on the Valorian homeworld. He took a suite of rooms in the palace and filled them with books and art from both Earth and Valor. He started a garden in a small courtyard, growing earth plants in alien soil. He attended Lyra's council meetings but rarely spoke, content to listen and learn. He befriended her younger sister, Princess Kira, teaching her about Earth music and literature. He spent hours with Commander Zane, her chief military advisor, discussing philosophy and strategy in abstract terms. And every evening, when Lyra's duties were done, she would find Daniel in their quarters or in his garden, always ready with a smile and a story or simply comfortable silence. She fell more in love with him each day, grateful for his presence and his patience. She never questioned why a peaceful species had survived long enough to reach the stars. She never wondered why Earth, despite its small military, had never been invaded or conquered. She simply accepted that her husband was a gentle soul from a gentle world, and that was enough. It would be 6 months before she learned the truth. The warning came in the middle of the night. Lyra was pulled from sleep by urgent alarms and the sound of heavy boots in the corridors. She reached for her armor, her warrior instincts taking over instantly. Beside her, Daniel sat up, his expression calm despite the chaos. "What's happening?" he asked. "Attack on the border colonies." Lyra was already strapping on her battle gear, her fingers moving through the familiar motions with practiced speed. "The Kreth Dominion. They've been quiet for years. I should have known it wouldn't last." Daniel watched her prepare, saying nothing. He knew about the Kreth from their evening conversations. They were conquerors, a species that had crushed dozens of civilizations and enslaved entire worlds. They were ruthless, efficient, and very dangerous. Within an hour, Lyra was in the war room with her generals and advisors. The reports were bad. 3 border colonies had been hit simultaneously, their defenses overwhelmed before they could even send proper distress calls. The Kreth fleet was massive, larger than any force they'd assembled in living memory. "We need to mobilize everything," Commander Zane said, his face grim. "Every ship, every soldier. This isn't a raid. This is an invasion." Lyra studied the tactical displays, her mind already calculating strategies and counter moves. "How long until the main fleet can deploy?" 18 hours. "Maybe less if we skip some of the safety checks." "Do it. And send word to our allies. We need every advantage we can get." The preparations took 2 days. Lyra barely slept, coordinating with her admirals and generals, reviewing intelligence reports and planning their response. Daniel stayed out of the way, understanding that his wife needed to focus. But he brought her food when she forgot to eat and stood beside her when she needed a moment of quiet. On the evening before her departure, Lyra found Daniel in their quarters. He was holding a small device, black and smooth, covered in symbols she didn't recognize. It was clearly human technology, but unlike anything she'd seen before. "I should come with you," Daniel said. His voice was still gentle, but there was something underneath it now, something she couldn't quite identify. Lyra felt her heart tighten. She loved this man, loved his kindness and his peaceful nature. The thought of him on a battlefield, surrounded by violence and death, was unbearable. "No, you're not a soldier, Daniel. I won't risk your life like that. Stay here where it's safe." "I've been in dangerous situations before," he said quietly. "More than you know. This is different. This is war. Real war. Not some diplomatic crisis." She crossed to him and took his face in her hands. "Please, stay here. I need to know you're safe. That's the only way I can focus on what needs to be done." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes, something ancient and heavy. Then he nodded. "As you wish, but please, take this with you." He handed her a small communicator, different from standard Valorian equipment. "If you need me, truly need me, press the center. I'll come, I promise." She took the device, more to ease his worry than from any belief she would use it. She kissed him deeply, memorizing the feel of his lips, the warmth of his body. "I love you." "I love you too. Be careful out there." The fleet departed the next morning. Lyra stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching her home world shrink behind them. Somewhere down there, Daniel was safe in the palace. That was all that mattered. The war went badly from the start. The Kreth had new weapons, technology that tore through Valorian shields like they weren't there. Their ships were fast and heavily armed, their tactics brutal and effective. Every battle was a struggle, every victory paid for in blood. Lyra fought with everything she had. Her tactical genius kept her fleet intact, finding weaknesses in the Kreth formations and exploiting them. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, 2 more appeared. The Kreth were pushing deeper into Valorian space, and there seemed to be no end to their numbers. Weeks turned into months. Lyra's hair grew longer, her face harder. She lost count of the battles, the ships destroyed, the soldiers who died under her command. She spoke with Daniel when she could, brief communications that never felt long enough. He always listened, always offered quiet support, never complained about being left behind. "How are things at home?" she asked during one call. "Quiet. Kira is keeping everything running smoothly. Your people are strong, Lyra. They believe in you. I hope their faith isn't misplaced." "It isn't. You're the best leader they could have." He paused. "Are you eating? Sleeping?" "When I can." "Promise me you'll take care of yourself. I need you to come home." "I promise. I have to go. There's another engagement in an hour." "I know. I love you." "I love you too." The call ended, and Lyra returned to the tactical displays, to the endless planning and fighting and dying. Then came the day that changed everything. The Kreth launched their main assault, a massive fleet that emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the home system. Their target was clear, the Valorian home world itself. Princess Kira took command of the planetary defense forces. She was young but skilled, trained since childhood in the art of war. The palace shields came online, weapon platforms activated, and every available ship moved to intercept. It wasn't enough. The Kreth fleet was too large, too powerful. They hammered the defenses with relentless fire, slowly but surely breaking through. In the palace command center, Kira watched the tactical displays with growing horror. They had hours at most before the shields failed. After that, the bombardment would begin. She sent an urgent message to Lyra, still 3 days away with the main fleet. "They've reached the capital. We can't hold them. Maybe a few hours if we're lucky. I'm sorry, sister. We failed." Daniel was in the command center when the message arrived. He'd been helping coordinate civilian evacuations, using his diplomatic skills to keep people calm. But now he stood still, watching the displays showing the Kreth fleet overwhelming the defenders. Kira noticed him and felt a wave of guilt. This gentle human, who had shown her nothing but kindness, was going to die because she couldn't protect him. "You should get to the evacuation ships," she said. "There's still time. I'm sorry we couldn't keep you safe." Daniel looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, his expression was completely different. The gentleness was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something that made her instinctively step back. "May I use your communications array?" he asked. "I need to make a call." Kira stared at him. "What? We're about to die, and you want to make a call?" "Yes, please. Trust me." She had no reason to trust him, no reason to think a phone call would change anything, but something in his voice, in his eyes, made her nod. "Fine. Use whatever you need." Daniel pulled out the black device he'd been carrying, the one Kira had seen him with before. He connected it to the military communications system with practiced ease, his fingers moving over the controls like he'd done it 1,000 times. Then he spoke, and his voice was completely different. Still quiet, but now carrying absolute authority. "Authorization code, right, Daniel. Service number 7732941. Rank, Fleet Admiral, United Earth Defense Force. Reactivation protocol, Omega-7. Target, current location. Threat level, extinction. Rules of engagement, free." The signal went out across space, encoded in frequencies Valorian equipment could barely detect. In the command center, everyone had stopped what they were doing, staring at Daniel in shock. Kira found her voice first. "Fleet Admiral? But you're a cultural ambassador. You're a civilian. You're—" "Retired," Daniel said simply. He was still looking at the displays, watching the Kreth fleet press their attack. "I retired 20 years ago. I'd had enough of war, enough of fighting and killing and watching good people die. I went into diplomatic service because I wanted to build things instead of destroying them. I wanted peace." He turned to look at her, and his eyes held the weight of countless battles. "But they attacked my wife's home. They threatened my family. That I cannot allow." On the tactical display, something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to tear open in high orbit, and through the tear came ships. Not just any ships. These were warships like nothing Kira had ever seen. Massive, powerful, covered in weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. There were 30 of them, each one a statement of overwhelming force. But the largest ship, the flagship, was something else entirely. It was twice the size of any other vessel, its hull midnight black, its weapons glowing with their own light. Across its bow, in letters that seemed to burn, was a single word: reckoning. A voice came through the speakers, clear and professional. "This is Captain Helen Ross of the UED's Reckoning, responding to Admiral Wright's reactivation code. Earth Defense Force has arrived and is ready for your orders, sir." Daniel's entire presence changed. The gentle scholar was gone. In his place stood something primal, powerful, barely contained. "Captain Ross, status report. All ships armed and ready, Admiral. We were on maneuvers when your signal came through. Command sends their regards and says welcome back. I took the liberty of bringing the Reckoning out of storage for you. She missed you. I missed her too." Daniel's fingers moved across the controls with absolute confidence. "Hostile fleet is designated Threat Alpha. Priority 1, protect the palace and civilian population centers. Priority 2, eliminate hostile combat capability. Priority 3, ensure survivors can carry word back to their leaders about what happens when you threaten human families." "Understood completely, Admiral. All ships, you heard the man. Show these bastards why you don't mess with us." Kira watched in stunned silence as the human fleet moved into position. The Kreth, sensing new opponents, turned some of their ships to engage. They still outnumbered the humans, 5-1. They still had the advantage. None of it was going to matter. The Kreth Dominion had conquered 47 different species across 200 years of expansion. Their commanders were veterans of thousands of battles. They knew war in all its forms, had faced every kind of enemy, and had never been truly defeated. When they saw the 30 human ships appear, they calculated the odds and felt confident. 5-1 was more than enough. They were wrong. The Reckoning fired first. Beams of pure energy, brighter than stars, lanced out from its weapons. 3 Kreth dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even debris remained. The other human ships followed, their weapons cutting through Kreth shields like they weren't there. Explosions blossomed across the enemy formation, each one marking another ship destroyed. In the palace command center, Kira watched with her mouth open. The battle displays showed human ships moving with impossible precision, each one perfectly coordinated with the others. Their weapons never missed, their shields never flickered. They moved through the Kreth fleet like sharks, through schools of fish. Daniel stood at the center of the command center, his hands moving across controls, his voice calm and steady as he directed the battle. "Captain Ross, 6 heavy cruisers are attempting to flank from the north. Dispatch fighter wings Beta and Gamma to intercept." "Already on it, Admiral. Fighters away." On the displays, smaller craft poured from the human ships, hundreds of them moving faster than anything Kira had ever seen. They swarmed through the Kreth formation, destroying engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. The Kreth tried to fight back, tried to use their numerical advantage, but it was like trying to catch lightning with your bare hands. A Kreth commander's voice came through the communications channel, speaking in the common galactic language. "What weapons are these? How are you doing this?" Daniel leaned toward the communicator. "These are standard Earth Defense Force weapons. We've had them for 50 years. You're not fighting experimental technology. You're fighting what we consider normal." The Kreth commander's silence spoke volumes. "Target the flagship," Daniel ordered. "Full spread. I want them to understand what they're facing." 20 human ships focused fire on the largest Kreth vessel. Its shields held for maybe 3 seconds before collapsing. The ship's hull buckled, then broke apart, scattering pieces across the battlefield. The Kreth fleet wavered, their formation breaking as panic set in. "They're trying to retreat," Commander Zane said, his voice filled with awe. He'd been watching in silence, unable to process what he was seeing. "Let them," Daniel said, "but make sure they understand the message first. Captain Ross, disable their engines but leave life support intact. I want survivors." "With pleasure, sir." The human ships adjusted their fire. Instead of destroying the fleeing Kreth vessels, they crippled them, leaving them floating helpless in space. It was more terrifying than simple destruction. It showed absolute control, absolute superiority. In 32 minutes, the battle was over. Half the Kreth fleet was destroyed. The other half was disabled. Their crews trapped in powerless ships, waiting to be captured or rescued. Not a single human vessel showed even minor damage. They floated in perfect formation around the planet, their weapons still hot, ready to continue if needed. The palace defenders, who had been preparing to die minutes ago, stood in shocked silence. Some were crying. Others were laughing in disbelief. All of them were trying to understand what had just happened. Daniel straightened up, stepping back from the controls. The terrible authority that had filled him during the battle faded slightly, and traces of the gentle man returned. But he was different now, changed, or maybe revealed for what he'd always been. "Princess Kira," he said formally, "I apologize for the deception. I should have told your sister the truth about my background. But I genuinely believed I was done with that life. I thought I could just be a diplomat, a husband, someone who grew flowers and read books." Kira found her voice, though it took effort. "You're a fleet admiral. You commanded those ships like you were born to it." "I was, in a way. I've been a soldier since I was 18 years old, 40 years of service, most of it in combat. I fought in wars you've never heard of, against enemies that no longer exist. By the time I retired, I'd seen more death than anyone should. I wanted something different, something peaceful." He looked at the displays showing the disabled Kreth ships. "But when they came here, when they threatened the people I love, I couldn't just do nothing." "How?" Zane asked. "How is Earth this powerful? All our intelligence said you were barely space-capable, that your military was small and primitive." Daniel smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "Earth has been in space for 200 years, but we've been fighting wars for thousands of years before that. We fought each other, fought over resources, fought over ideas and beliefs. We got very, very good at it. By the time we reached the stars, we'd perfected violence in ways most species never imagine." He brought up a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images of ancient warriors, medieval armies, modern soldiers, and finally, space fleets. "Every generation of humans has known war. We've tried every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. We've made mistakes and learned from them. We've lost battles and remembered why. And when we finally got to space and met other species, we realized something important." "What?" Kira asked. "That the strongest person in any room is the one who doesn't have to prove it. We could have conquered. We had the technology, the weapons, the will. But we'd already learned where that path leads. So we chose diplomacy instead. We chose to be known for our art and music and philosophy. We chose to be underestimated." He looked at her directly. "But we never forgot how to fight. We just preferred not to." A communication came through from the lead Kreth ship. The commander's voice was shaking. "Human fleet, we surrender. Please, we surrender. Don't destroy us." Daniel walked to the communications panel. "Your surrender is accepted. You will remain in position until Valorian forces arrive to take you into custody. You will stand trial for your crimes. But before that happens, I want you to carry a message back to your Dominion." "What message?" Tell them that Earth considers the Valorian Empire under our protection now. Tell them that Queen Lyra is married to an Earth admiral, and that means her people are our people. Tell them that if any Kreth ship ever enters this space again, if they ever threaten these worlds again, I won't be retired anymore, and I won't show mercy." His voice dropped to barely a whisper, but somehow it filled the room with weight. "Tell them I'll bring the entire Earth Defense Force, all 500 ships, and I will erase the Kreth Dominion from the galaxy, every world, every station, every ship, until nothing remains but a warning to others. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes, we understand. It won't happen again. I swear it." "Good. Now sit there quietly and think about the mistake you made." The communication ended. In the command center, nobody moved, nobody spoke. They were all trying to process what they'd learned, trying to reconcile the gentle cultural ambassador with the terrifying military commander. Daniel turned to face them all. "I know you have questions. I'll answer what I can. But first, we need to secure the prisoners and make sure there are no other Kreth forces in the system. Captain Ross, maintain defensive positions. Scan for any hidden ships or weapons." "Already on it, Admiral. System is clear except for the disabled enemy vessels." "Excellent work. Stand down to condition yellow, but stay alert." "Understood, sir." Princess Kira stepped forward. 500 ships? You said Earth has 500 warships?" 537 as of last month, yes, plus support vessels, transports, and station defenses. We've been building steadily for 2 centuries. Not because we wanted war, but because we knew someone out here probably did. "And they're all like those?" She pointed at the displays showing the human fleet. "The Reckoning is special. She was my flagship for 15 years, the most advanced ship in the fleet. But yes, the others are similar. Different classes, different specializations, but all designed by people who understand war at a fundamental level." Commander Zane shook his head in disbelief. "We never knew. Nobody knew. How did you hide this?" "We didn't hide it, we just didn't advertise it. Our diplomats are real diplomats. Our cultural ambassadors genuinely care about art and music. Our scientists really are focused on discovery and learning. But yes, we also have a military. A very good military. We just keep it quiet unless needed." "Why?" Kira demanded. "Why pretend to be weak?" "Because we're not pretending. We are peaceful. We genuinely prefer diplomacy to warfare, but being peaceful and being weak are 2 different things. We learned that lesson the hard way, back on Earth before we ever reached the stars. The species that survived were the ones who could fight when they had to, but chose not to when they didn't have to." He walked to the window, looking out at the planet below. Somewhere down there was his garden, his books, the peaceful life he'd built. "I came to that summit on Kepler 9 because I believed in peace. I met your sister because I genuinely wanted to understand other cultures. I married her because I love her, not for political reasons. Everything I told her was true. I am a humble man who loves growing flowers and reading poetry. I just also happen to be very good at war." "Does Lyra know?" Kira asked quietly. "About any of this?" "No, I never told her. She knew I served in Earth's diplomatic corps, but not about my military background. I thought it didn't matter anymore. I thought I'd left that life behind for good." He turned back to face them. "I was wrong. And when she gets here, I'll have to explain everything. I'll have to tell her that the man she married has killed more people than she can imagine, that I commanded fleets in battles that destroyed entire civilizations, that I'm not the simple, gentle soul she thought I was." "But you are gentle," Kira said. "I've seen you with her. The way you care for your garden, the way you talk about art and music. That's real." "It is. Both things are real. I'm a man who loves peace and beauty. And I'm also a soldier who knows how to kill efficiently. Humans are complicated that way. We contain multitudes." A new communication came through. It was Queen Lyra, her image appearing on the main display. She looked exhausted, her armor scorched and dented from battle. "Kira, we received your message. We're pushing the engines as hard as we can. Hold on, we're coming." "Sister," Kira said, her voice breaking slightly. "You don't need to hurry. The battle is over, we're safe." "What? How?" Kira looked at Daniel, who closed his eyes briefly, then stepped into view of the camera. "Hello, Lyra." Lyra's expression shifted from confusion to shock as she saw the human ships on the tactical display behind him. "Daniel? What's happening? Whose ships are those?" "They're mine," he said quietly. "Or they were. We need to talk." Queen Lyra's fleet arrived at the home world 2 days later. The journey that should have taken 3 days was completed in 2 through dangerous overuse of the ship's engines. She had pushed her vessels to their limits, desperate to reach home before it was too late. What she found when she emerged from hyperspace left her speechless. The Kreth fleet, or what remained of it, floated in space like broken toys. Some ships were completely destroyed, others disabled and drifting, and surrounding them, maintaining perfect formation, were the 30 human warships. They hung in space like predators. Patient and deadly, their weapons still active and ready. Lyra had seen many fleets in her life. She'd commanded battles against some of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. But she had never seen ships like these. The design was clean and efficient, with none of the decorative elements favored by other species. These were pure weapons, built by people who understood violence at a level most species never reached. And at the center of it all was the Reckoning, the massive flagship that dwarfed everything around it. Just looking at it made something primal in Lyra's mind whisper warnings. This was a ship built by apex predators, by a species that had climbed to the top of their food chain and then kept climbing. "Open a channel to the palace," she ordered. Her voice was steady, but her mind was racing. Daniel had called these ships. Somehow her gentle husband had summoned the most powerful military force she'd ever encountered. Princess Kira appeared on the screen, and behind her, standing quietly, was Daniel. He looked the same as always. Simple clothes, calm expression, gentle eyes. But Lyra saw him differently now. How had she missed it? How had she not seen what was hidden beneath the surface? "Sister," Kira said, "welcome home. As you can see, the situation is under control." "So, I see. Daniel, I think we need to talk." "Yes," he agreed. "We do. I'll meet you at the palace landing pad." The communication ended. Lyra gave orders for her fleet to stand down and made preparations to shuttle to the surface. Around her, her crew worked in silence. They'd all seen the human ships. They'd all heard the recordings of the battle. The entire Valorian military was going to need time to process what they'd learned. Commander Zane approached her. "My queen, the battle recordings are extraordinary. The humans destroyed or disabled a Kreth fleet 5 times their size in 30 minutes. No casualties, no significant damage to their ships. They fought with precision I've never witnessed before." "How?" Lyra asked. "How are they this powerful?" "I've been studying their tactics. Every move was calculated, every shot placed with perfect accuracy. They didn't waste a single blast, didn't make a single mistake. It's like they've been fighting wars for thousands of years and learned from every one of them." "Maybe they have," Lyra said quietly. When her shuttle touched down at the palace, Daniel was waiting. He stood alone on the landing pad, his hands clasped in front of him. As Lyra descended the ramp, still wearing her battle armor, she studied him carefully. He looked nervous, uncertain. That was familiar. But there was also something else now, something she'd never noticed before. A weight to his presence, a sense of coiled strength beneath the gentle surface. "Hello, Lyra," he said softly. "Hello, Daniel. Or should I call you Admiral Wright?" He flinched slightly. "Just Daniel, please." I've been retired for 20 years. That rank belongs to someone I used to be. But you used it. You called that fleet. You commanded them in battle. She stepped closer. Who are you really? I'm the man who loves you. That hasn't changed. He met her eyes. But you deserve the truth about my past. Can we walk? There's a lot to tell. They walked through the palace gardens, the place where Daniel had spent so many peaceful hours. The earth plants he'd grown were thriving, their flowers bright against the alien soil. It seemed absurd that hands capable of such destruction could also nurture such delicate beauty. Daniel began to speak. His voice remained quiet, but the story he told was anything but gentle. He'd been born on Earth during a period of expansion and conflict. Humanity was reaching for the stars and encountering resistance. Not from hostile aliens, but from the harsh reality of space itself and from internal conflicts about how to proceed. By the time he was 18, Earth had established colonies on 6 different worlds and was in contact with a dozen alien species. He'd joined the military young, drawn by a desire to protect his people and explore the galaxy. He showed natural talent for tactics and leadership. By 25, he was commanding a cruiser. By 30, he led a battle group. By 35, he was a rear admiral with a reputation for winning impossible battles. I fought in the Outer Rim conflicts, Daniel said. Wars you've never heard of because they were over before the Valorian Empire knew they existed. Species that tried to expand into human territory or threatened our colonies or attacked our ships. I fought them all and won every time. How many battles? Lyra asked. I stopped counting after 200. Most were small, skirmishes and border disputes, but some were large. I commanded fleets of 100 ships or more. I made decisions that killed millions of enemy combatants. He looked at his hands. I was very good at it. Too good. They kept promoting me, giving me more responsibility, more authority. By the time he was 40, Daniel commanded Earth's entire 7th Fleet, over 200 ships and 50,000 personnel. He fought in the expansion wars, brutal conflicts against aggressive species that saw humanity's growth as a threat. He won battle after battle, protected colony after colony, and earned medals and commendations he never wanted. The reckoning was built specifically for me, he continued. The most advanced warship Earth had ever constructed. When I took command, we were in the middle of the worst war in human history. The enemy had weapons that could crack planets, fleets that outnumbered us 3-1. Everyone expected us to lose. But you didn't, Lyra said. No, I won. But the cost... He trailed off, staring at nothing. I lost so many ships, so many good people. Every victory came with casualty reports that haunted my dreams. I did things I'm not proud of, made choices that saved lives but destroyed my faith in myself. The war ended when Daniel led a final assault on the enemy's home system. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the enemy had surrendered unconditionally, but Daniel's fleet was devastated, a third of his ships destroyed, 15,000 dead, and Daniel had to write letters to families, had to attend funerals, had to look at the faces of people who blamed him for not saving their loved ones. I served 5 more years after that, Daniel said, rose to Fleet Admiral, the youngest in Earth's history. I commanded all our military operations, advised the government, prepared for threats that might never come. But I was dying inside. Every day felt like carrying a mountain. Every decision felt like choosing who would live and who would die. So he retired, stepped down at 45, when most admirals were just reaching their prime. He went into diplomatic service, using his knowledge of alien cultures and military strategy to help prevent wars instead of fight them. He traveled the galaxy, met new species, learned to appreciate art and music and poetry. He tried to become someone different, someone better. And then I met you, he said, turning to face Lyra. You were everything I admired, strong, brilliant, honorable. but also kind in your own way, willing to listen and learn. I fell in love with you completely, and I thought I could just be your husband, just be a diplomat and a gardener and someone who made you happy. I thought my past was behind me." Lyra stood silent for a long moment, processing everything. Her husband, the gentleman who grew flowers and read poetry, had commanded fleets in wars that shaped the galaxy. He'd made decisions that killed millions. He was, in effect, one of the most dangerous people alive. "Did you ever lie to me?" she asked finally. "No, never. Everything I told you was true. I do love peace. I do prefer diplomacy to war. I genuinely enjoy art and music and growing things. That's not fake, Lyra. That's who I became or who I'm trying to be." "But you're also a warrior." "Yes, I know how to fight. I know how to kill. I'm very good at both. But being good at something doesn't mean I want to do it." He reached out and took her hand. "I love you. I chose you not for politics or strategy, but because you made me feel human again. You made me believe I could be more than just a weapon." Lyra looked at their joined hands. His fingers were gentle, careful not to grip too tight. The same hands that had directed battles killing millions now held hers with such tenderness. "When the Kreth attacked, you could have told me the truth. You could have offered to help. Would you have let me? You were so determined to keep me safe, to protect me from the war. How could I tell you that I've fought in wars you can't imagine?" He smiled sadly. "Besides, I truly believed you could win without me. I had faith in you. But when they reached the home world, then I had no choice. My wife's people were in danger. My sister-in-law was about to die. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing, no matter how much I wanted to stay retired." His grip tightened slightly. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I'm not sorry I saved them. I'd do it again." Lyra felt tears forming in her eyes. She was angry, confused, hurt by the deception, but she also understood. Daniel had been trying to leave his violent past behind, to be someone better, and when faced with an impossible choice, he'd chosen to protect her people at the cost of revealing his true nature. "Show me," she said suddenly. "Show me the recordings of the battle. I need to see it." They went to the command center where Kira and Zane were waiting. Daniel pulled up the battle recordings and played them without comment. Lyra watched as her husband transformed into someone else entirely. The gentle man disappeared, replaced by a cold, efficient commander who orchestrated destruction with artistic precision. His orders were calm and clear. His strategies were brilliant. The human fleet moved like extensions of his will, each ship responding instantly to his commands. And the Kreth, for all their experience and power, were helpless against him. He dismantled their fleet the way a master swordsman might disarm a novice, making it look easy because he was just that good. When the recordings ended, Lyra turned to Daniel. "That's who you were. That's the real you." "That's part of me," Daniel corrected gently. "The part I tried to leave behind. But yes, that's real too." "And the man I married? The one who quotes poetry and grows roses? Also real. Both are real, Lyra. I'm a complicated person, full of contradictions. I'm a warrior who loves peace. A killer who grows flowers. A weapon who writes love letters." He moved closer to her. "I'm human, and humans are capable of great violence and great kindness, often at the same time. We're a species of contradictions." Lyra thought about that, about humanity's reputation as peaceful diplomats and the reality of their military might, about her husband's gentle nature and his capacity for overwhelming violence, about the fact that the most dangerous person she'd ever met was also the kindest. "I need time," she said finally, "to process this, to understand what it means." "I understand. Take all the time you need." Daniel's expression was sad but accepting. I'll sleep in my old quarters, give you space. No, Lyra said quickly. No, stay with me. I'm not angry with you, Daniel. I'm just overwhelmed. But I don't want you to go. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. That night, they lay together in their quarters, not speaking but finding comfort in each other's presence. Lyra's mind kept returning to what she'd learned, trying to reconcile the two versions of her husband. Eventually, exhausted from battle and emotional strain, she fell asleep. Daniel remained awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd destroyed the life he'd built. Wondering if Lyra could truly accept who he was. Wondering if he could ever truly leave his past behind, or if he'd always be Admiral Wright, the weapon Earth had forged and could never fully retire. 3 days after the battle, Queen Lyra called a meeting of her High Council. The chamber was filled with generals, admirals, advisors, and nobles from across the Empire. All of them had heard about the human fleet. All of them had questions. Daniel attended at Lyra's request, sitting quietly beside her throne. He wore simple civilian clothes, no uniform or rank insignia. He looked like what he claimed to be, a retired diplomat who happened to be married to the Queen. But everyone in the room now knew the truth, and they watched him with a mixture of awe and fear. Commander Zane presented a detailed analysis of the battle. He showed tactical displays, weapon efficiency reports, and casualty estimates. The numbers were clear. The human fleet had destroyed or disabled 73 Kreth warships without losing a single vessel or suffering significant damage. It was the most one-sided military victory in recorded history. The question we must address, Zane concluded, is what this means for the Empire. We've always considered ourselves the dominant military power in this region, but Earth's capabilities far exceed our own. Their technology is decades ahead of ours. Their tactics are refined beyond anything we've developed, and they apparently have over 500 ships of similar quality. The room erupted in discussion. Some generals suggested forming a stronger alliance with Earth, making them formal military partners. Others worried about appearing weak or dependent. A few suggested that the Empire needed to increase military spending dramatically to match Earth's capabilities. Lyra let them argue for several minutes before raising her hand for silence. You're all missing the point. Earth isn't a threat to us. They've had this capability for decades and never used it for conquest. They could have invaded our territory, demanded tribute, forced us into submission. They didn't. They stayed quiet, focused on diplomacy, and only revealed their strength when our people were in danger. But why? Asked General Trent, a veteran warrior with more battle scars than most soldiers collected in a lifetime. Why hide such power? Why pretend to be weak? Lyra looked at Daniel. Would you like to answer that? Daniel stood slowly. He still looked uncomfortable being the center of attention, but he spoke clearly. We hide our power because we don't want to use it. Earth's history is full of wars, conflicts that killed millions and destroyed civilizations. We learned the hard way that military might doesn't bring happiness or prosperity. It just brings more fighting. He walked to the center of the chamber, addressing the assembled leaders. 200 years ago, when we first reached the stars, we made a choice. We could be conquerors, using our technology and tactics to build an empire, or we could be diplomats, using our knowledge to build friendships. We chose friendship, not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to make that choice. But you still built 500 warships, Trent pointed out. That's not the action of a peaceful species. We built them because the galaxy isn't safe. There are species like the Kreth, empires that only respect strength. We needed the capability to defend ourselves and our allies. But having weapons and using weapons are different things. Daniel's voice grew quieter. I've fought in more wars than anyone in this room. I've seen what victory costs. And I can tell you with certainty that the best battle is the one you never have to fight. He returned to Lyra's side. Earth will help defend the Valorian Empire if needed. Not because we want to control you, but because you're our allies. Because your queen is my wife. Because your people welcomed me into their homes. We protect our own, and you're one of us now. The council accepted this, though some still looked uncertain. Plans were made for joint military training and technology sharing. Earth would station a small defensive fleet in Valorian space, enough to discourage attacks but not enough to seem like an occupation force. In return, the Valorians would share their knowledge of this region of space and provide support for Earth's diplomatic efforts. When the meeting ended, Lyra and Daniel walked together through the palace. They didn't speak at first, both lost in thought. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. "Are you really retired, or will Earth call you back to service?" "I'm really retired. Earth has plenty of capable admirals. They don't need me anymore. I made that clear when I sent the recall code. One battle, one emergency, and then I'm done again." "What if there's another emergency?" Daniel stopped walking and faced her. "Then I'll deal with it. I won't let people I love be hurt because I want to maintain my retirement. But I'm not going back to active duty. I'm not going to spend my days commanding fleets and planning battles. That life is behind me." "What if I asked you to? What if the Empire needed someone with your skills?" He smiled sadly. "Then I'd remind you that I married you because I love you, not because I wanted a military position. I'd recommend other Earth officers who could help, and I'd hope you'd understand that I need to be Daniel Wright, the gardener and diplomat, not Fleet Admiral Wright, the weapon." Lyra took his hand. Over the past few days, she'd thought constantly about what she'd learned, about her husband's past, his capabilities, and what it meant for their future. She'd been angry at first, feeling deceived. But the more she thought about it, the more she understood. Daniel had been honest about who he was. He loved peace, loved art and music, loved growing things. He'd simply omitted the fact that he was also capable of overwhelming violence. And when she really examined their relationship, she realized the signs had always been there. The way he moved with unconscious grace, like someone trained in combat. The way he sometimes looked at tactical displays with instant understanding. The way other species diplomats had always shown him unusual respect. She'd been so focused on his gentleness that she'd missed the strength underneath. Like looking at a sheathed sword and only seeing the decorative scabbard, never considering the blade within. "I love you," she said simply. "Both versions of you, the warrior and the gardener, the admiral and the poet. All of it." Relief washed over Daniel's face. "I love you too. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for accepting me." They kissed, and for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened lifted. They were just two people who loved each other, standing in a palace garden, finding comfort in each other's presence. The next few weeks brought more changes. The Kreth Dominion formally surrendered, offering massive reparations and promising never to enter Valorian space again. Word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy, and humanity's reputation shifted overnight. They were no longer seen as peaceful diplomats hiding in the shadows. They were recognized as a major power, perhaps the major power, who simply preferred peace to war. Other species approached Earth with new respect, offering alliances and trade agreements. Some did it out of genuine friendship, others did it out of fear. But all of them understood that attacking Earth or its allies would be a fatal mistake. Daniel watched it all from his garden in the Valorian palace. He'd returned to his plants and books, spending his days in quiet contentment. But now, when he walked through the palace halls, people treated him differently. They bowed deeper, spoke more carefully. Some looked at him with admiration, others with fear. He hated it. He'd spent 20 years building a reputation as a gentle, harmless diplomat. Now that was gone, replaced by his old identity as a military commander. People saw the weapon instead of the man. Lyra noticed his discomfort and tried to help. She made it clear to her people that Daniel was her husband first and a retired admiral second. She encouraged him to continue his diplomatic work, to keep teaching about Earth culture and arts. But the damage was done. His secret was out. One evening, Princess Kira found Daniel sitting alone in his garden, staring at his roses. "You look sad," she observed, sitting beside him. "I'm fine, just thinking." "About how people see you now?" He glanced at her. "That obvious?" "To me, yes. I've watched you these past weeks. You're uncomfortable with the attention, with the respect. You miss being invisible. I miss being simple, being just Lyra's husband, the guy who grows flowers and talks about poetry. Now I'm the terrifying human admiral who destroyed an entire fleet." He touched one of the roses gently. "This is who I want to be, not that." Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can I tell you something? Before the battle, some of our generals made jokes about you. They called you soft, weak, unsuited for a warrior queen. They couldn't understand why Lyra chose you." "I know. I heard the whispers. But now they respect you. They understand that you're not weak at all, that you chose to be gentle, which is different from being incapable of strength. That's not a bad thing, Daniel. It is, if it means I can never just be myself again. Then keep being yourself. Keep growing your flowers. Keep reading poetry. Keep being the man my sister fell in love with." Kira smiled. "The fact that you can also command fleets and destroy armies doesn't change who you are at your core. It just makes you more interesting." Daniel laughed despite himself. "Is that what I am? Interesting?" "Very. You're proof that humans are more complicated than anyone thought. You're not warriors or diplomats. You're both. You're everything all at once." She stood up. "Don't let other people's perceptions change who you are. You've earned the right to be whoever you want to be." After she left, Daniel sat alone with his thoughts. Maybe Kira was right. Maybe he didn't have to choose between being a warrior and being a gardener. Maybe he could be both, accepting all parts of himself instead of trying to hide or deny them. That night, as he lay beside Lyra, he spoke quietly into the darkness. "I need to stop being ashamed of my past. I did terrible things, but I also saved lives. I fought wars, but they were wars worth fighting. I'm not just a weapon. I'm a person who happened to be very good at warfare, but chose peace instead." Lyra turned to face him. "Yes, that's exactly right. I think I've been running from who I was instead of accepting it, trying to be someone completely different instead of integrating both sides of myself. So what will you do?" "I'll keep being your husband, keep being a diplomat, keep growing flowers and reading books, but I'll stop pretending I was never a soldier. I'll accept that I'm someone who knows war intimately and chose peace because I understood the cost. Maybe that makes me more qualified to promote peace, not less." "I think it does," Lyra agreed. She kissed him softly. "You're a complicated man, Daniel Wright, but that's why I love you." 6 months after the battle, a formal ceremony was held at the palace. Representatives from Earth, including several high-ranking military officers, attended. Captain Helen Ross of the Reckoning was there, along with crew members who had served under Daniel for years. The ceremony recognized the alliance between Earth and the Valorian Empire. Treaties were signed, embassies were established, and cultural exchange programs were created. But there was also a personal element. Daniel was presented with a medal from the Valorian Empire, recognizing his role in saving the home world. He accepted it with his usual quiet grace, making a short speech about the importance of peace and cooperation. But then, Lyra surprised him. She announced that a new garden was being built in the palace grounds, a place where plants from both Earth and Valor would grow together. It would be called Wright's Garden, and it would be open to everyone who wanted to learn about peace, growth, and the beauty of life. Daniel was moved to tears. It was the perfect gesture, recognizing both his military service and his love of peaceful pursuits. It said that he didn't have to be just one thing. He could be everything he was: warrior and gardener, admiral and poet, weapon and artist. In his speech, accepting the honor, he spoke words that would be remembered across the galaxy. War is easy. Anyone with enough weapons can destroy. But peace requires real strength. It requires choosing to build instead of demolish, to nurture instead of hurt, to understand instead of hate. I've done both. I've destroyed and I've built. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that building is harder and more rewarding. So I choose to build. I choose peace. Not because I'm weak, but because I'm strong enough to make that choice. The ceremony ended with celebration. Music played, food was shared, and people from different worlds mingled and talked. Daniel stood with Lyra, watching it all, feeling more at peace than he had in months. Captain Ross approached them, smiling. "Admiral, it's good to see you looking happy." "I am happy, Helen, and it's just Daniel now. Please." "Old habits," she said with a laugh. "The crew wanted me to tell you they miss you, but they're glad you're doing well. You deserve this peace." "Thank you. That means a lot." After she left, Daniel and Lyra walked into the new garden together. The plants were still young, just beginning to grow, but the potential was clear. Earth roses grew beside Valorian fire blossoms. Trees from both worlds reached toward the same sun, different species existing together, creating something more beautiful than either could alone. "This is perfect," Daniel said softly. "Thank you." "You're welcome. I wanted you to have something that represents who you really are. Not the weapon or the diplomat, but both. The full person." They sat together on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Around them, the garden grew, just as their love had grown, rooted in acceptance and understanding. Daniel Wright, formerly Fleet Admiral of the United Earth Defense Force, currently Cultural Ambassador and Royal Consort, had finally found what he'd been searching for. Not escape from his past, but integration of all his parts into one whole person. He was a warrior who chose peace, a killer who grew flowers, a weapon who wrote love poems. He was human, with all the contradictions and complexities that implied. And he was, finally, at peace with himself. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity protected its own with overwhelming force when necessary. But they preferred to build gardens, create art, and foster friendships. The strongest species wasn't the one who fought the most. It was the one who could fight, but chose not to, unless absolutely necessary. In his garden, under alien stars, Daniel Wright smiled and was content.